Well, you know the old saying, there's nothing for certain other than death and taxes. So that's the thing. That's the other side of investing too. You've had some success, you made some profit, and you don't get to keep all of it. You got to pay some in taxes, federal or local or state taxes on your gains that you've had in there. And we're going to talk here for a moment about taxes and understand it's not so much about what you make, it's about what you keep. So if you have some great gains, but you pay it all out in taxes or a large part of it, you may not be keeping it as much as a more tax advantage type of investment or mutual fund or whatever. But as we start this section, let's just get an understanding of how investing taxes kind of work, because it could be different or is different than, let's say, your regular salary or income that you might be getting, possibly. One thing with the tax section here, I'm going to give you some overall thoughts, overall ideas, but I'm very blessed to have students from over 141 different countries all over the world. So what does that mean? There's 141 different ways that people are taxed. So look at your own government and your own type of tax situation. So you need to do a little homework on that and do your own little research, and I'll give you some examples here to at least help you understand what to look for and some of the terminology you might be looking for, like capital gains, for example, terminology that'll help you when you're trying to figure out your own tax situation. So with investing, there's taxes and there's fees. That's part of the whole what you make or what you keep is more important than what you make. So that's where, like, on the fee part, just a side note on the fee part, that's why when you have mutual funds that charge high fees or a full service stockbroker that's charging high fees, you're not keeping as much of your investment. So things that you can do to drive the cost of fees down is going to really help you as far as what you overall keep, as far as what you keep, in addition to the tax bite you have as well. That's why funds like exchange traded funds or index funds are very popular. They give you a good diversification at very, very low cost. So those might be things to look at if you're finding you're paying a lot in fees. Now, but let's talk about taxes in this section. And as I said, taxes vary all over the world, so look at your own tax situation. But really, investing really breaks it down into two big buckets when it comes to taxes. The first one is capital appreciation. You may have heard me mention this a couple times in the course, but the first one is capital appreciation. That's the tax gain when you sell. And there might be other fees associated with it, like a transaction fee when you're buying and selling. So aware there's always fees, but when you think about capital appreciation, it's the taxable gain when you sell. So if I buy a stock at X and it grows up to Y, that difference between X and Y in its price and my value, my total number, like shares times the stock price, how much I made when I sell, that's a taxable gain. That's a tax event or a capital appreciation capital gain. So if you ever hear the terminology maybe where you live of capital gains or capital gains taxes, and they might be taxed at a different rate than your regular income type gain. At this current time in the United States, for example, there's a different rate on taxes, a better rate in taxes on capital gains than there is on your ordinary income or income you make on your, let's say, salary or your hourly rate that you're getting paid to work for somebody, for example. So think about the capital appreciation and what you sell it for versus what you bought it for. You might hear the term what you bought it for is your basis. So if you're looking at capital gains or reading stuff and they start talking about, well, you need to know your basis. Well, your basis is what you bought your stock at, your mutual fund or your stock at. That's what your basis is. That's where you started from. And hopefully it'll go up, but it could go down too. You're not paying taxes on things you're losing money on. Later we'll talk about tax harvesting as a strategy that will help you offset some of those gains. But for right now, you want to understand that you pay taxes on that difference between what you sell and what you buy it at. So it's important to keep records and know what you're buying your stocks at, because that's going to be your basis. Now, for a lot of things like mutual funds, for example, they're tracking that for you, or a lot of the online brokerages, and certainly a full-service financial planner, a full-service broker should be tracking your basis for you and including that in your reports. So when you're looking at the reports, you get started with somebody, or if you're getting started, ask them, well, how do I know what my basis is? Do I have to keep the records, or do you keep them for me? If you're like my wife and I, especially my wife, the accountant, she likes to keep every single record. So if you do that, that's a great way to go. So that way you have the record of what you originally bought it for and not relying on others. But the firms should track it for you as well. So what happens is when you buy a stock, it's when you sell that stock is when you have a capital gain. Now with mutual funds, it's a little bit different because mutual funds are a basket of stocks as an example, or bonds, whatever your mutual fund is, but let's say stocks, and they're continually buying and selling throughout the year. So then at the end of the year, they very likely could have a capital gain that they're going to pass on to you. So usually at the end of the year, maybe a month or so before the year ends, they'll send you a sheet and tell you what your capital gain is, and that's taxable income that you have. So if you have let's say a mutual fund that has a high turnover rate we talked about, or a high churning where they're buying and selling a lot, they might be incurring more taxes than something that's more tax efficient. Like an index fund typically might be more tax efficient where they're not buying and selling as much, they're just kind of trying to match the index. So that's one way you have a taxable event, is a capital gain. The other way is through income or dividends. And that's when you get paid a dividend, or money is being paid to you directly from the company. If you own an individual stock or a mutual fund or whatever, they'll pass those dividends through the fund and on to you. But let's think of it from an individual stock standpoint, that if I bought this individual stock and every quarter they're paying me a dividend, well, that's income that's coming into me. So you want to be aware that income is taxable. It might vary once again by country, but certainly in the United States, that income is certainly taxable. As an example, I would think it would be taxable anywhere. What you want to look at for your income from dividends is in your country to see if they might have a different way of treating income from dividends. Sometimes they might consider it like a short-term gain, same even with capital gains actually, a short-term gain that is taxed at a higher rate than a long-term gain if they separate it out that way. So understand it could be that way as far as your different stocks and different things as well. Typically, if you hold something over a year, you're going to be in a long-term gain category, but not necessarily. I mean, once again, it varies by country. A lot of times also, dividends are treated as ordinary income, or treated as just like your salary or hourly rate. And that might be at a higher rate than, let's say, a capital gains type of rate, for example. So in the U.S., you might be at a 20% capital gains tax rate, where your ordinary income, you might be paying 30% or more on that part as far as ordinary income. So see a tax advisor around that as far as the different types of tax situations for you, and understand you're still making money. It's just you got to pay out a portion of that money. So that's all good. Capital gains and dividends are good things. You're making money. Just understand you're not making all that money because there's still a tax hit there too. And those are the two primary ways where you see gains in your portfolio, but also where you see taxes occurring. And think about capital appreciation might be known as capital gains, and then dividends would also might be considered income.